like to call the meeting of the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and I would like to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded by NRSD in conjunction with the Templeton Community TV, or TCTV, and it is provided to Templeton and Phillipston Cable Access TV. You can also find these videos out on YouTube. I believe they're shared via the Facebook page. All right. The first item on our agenda was approval of minutes for September 18th. They're not quite ready yet, so we will pass over that item, and we will approve those at our next regularly scheduled meeting. Next up are bills and payrolls. I would entertain a motion to recommend to accept the bills and payroll warrants as presented. So moved. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to accept the bills and payroll warrants as presented. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries unanimous. Next up, we have our report from our student representative.
Yes, so first, the Warrior Fest is going to be on October 26th in the high school rear parking lot from 1 to 5. There's going to be boys and girls soccer games going on, food trucks, local vendors, high school clubs, and organizations will all be hosting booths. There'll be a knockerball tournament, and then obviously the homecoming football game will be that night. And the Varsity Letterman's Club will be hosting fireworks after football.
The elementary school is going on field trip to the pumpkin patch on October 16th or 17th.
The marching band competed in a festival competition and have a field trip to watch other performances, and they did a phenomenal job.
Field hockey just qualified for districts. They've been having a great season. They're 8-1-2 right now, so we're excited for them.
The football team won against Uxbridge. It was a very, very close game. It was a really good game.
Both soccer teams are doing phenomenally in their season so far.
The middle school football team won their game last week against the Mohawk Trail.
This week's football game is on Saturday at 6 at Kingsborough.
The field hockey senior night is next Wednesday, October 16th, against Gardner Home at 6 o'clock.
The senior class is holding a turkey raffle on November 14th at 6 p.m. at the Baldwinville Legion. And
the middle school is offering Taekwondo classes after school for the next few months. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from our student reps? Next up, we have public input. If there's anybody who'd like to come down and speak, I just ask you come to the front and identify yourself and where you live, and we try to limit it to 3 minutes. Do I have anyone who'd like to come down and speak?
Hello, my name is Matthew Cormier. I am a resident here in Templeton, Massachusetts. I have a concern about Facebook comments in a Facebook group around the town of Templeton. It is a group of people who do live here. They are making nasty comments about the students and student body. I believe it is an issue that students are not represented in the school, and we do have a decision on what happens in our school district, believing it is our education. And I believe things should be addressed, and we should have more representation within our school and within the decision that is made. Thank you.
Do I have anyone else who'd like to step up for public comment? Okay, seeing no one else. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Karen DeJoy, and I'm the school nurse over at TES, and I'm also a Templeton resident. I sent you all an email not long ago containing some information about what the school nurse does right now with 2 nurses. There are some numbers in there. Let me read my letter to you quickly, if that's okay. Dear School Committee, please consider the enclosed info regarding TES nurse mandated responsibilities with 2 nurses. These screenings must be done regardless of the 50 to 100 daily visits so far, as well as 16 daily scheduled visits every day. We have not reached flu season yet, and I also included the report on the number of visits we had in September, and that was 1,100 or more visits in September alone. Please continue to fight for the higher budget. If the lower budget is certified, the medical safety of our students is in jeopardy. I included 1,435 screenings have to be done. If we add this on to the 1,100 monthly visits that we see, that we've seen in September, and project about the same for the rest of the year, not even hitting flu season yet, plus 300 scheduled medications every month. If Phillipston were added to this, there would be 1,696 screenings with the same info and splitting a nurse between Templeton and Phillipston, all to be done with minus a half nurse and be safe at the same time. Please consider the information that I sent to you, and please keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Lyons. I'm also a Templeton resident. As some of you know, I've been recording your meetings for quite some time.
Many meetings.
And I just want to say that, yes, I've been behind the camera for quite a while, and I've seen your meetings, and I've watched you deliberate, and I've watched you argue amongst each other, and I've watched you cry with each other over things that you've had to do that you haven't wanted to do. I'm hoping this time you stick with it and you do the job that you were put into office to do, and you support these kids and you stick with the budget that you want. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks,
Thank
Ann.
you.
Hello, my name is Isaiah Wooston. I would just like to say that I fully support the bigger budget because I've moved around a lot. I've lived in a total of around 8, maybe 9 different states, been in quite a few different schools. They were all either private schools or I was homeschooled, so coming into the public school environment was very intimidating for me. And my freshman year, we walked in through the doors, and there was Miss Vassell greeting us with an amazing smile and loving my entire family. And I honestly could say today, if it wasn't for Ms. Vassell and what she's been doing in our school would not be the same at all. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do I have any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on with our agenda. The NDEA?
We're here. Yeah. And it's very nice to see you all.
Yes.
It's nice to see you too.
Thank you.
I wanted to start tonight by making a short comment about all of the staff of the school district that you see here tonight. A lot of times people bring up to us, whether on this cowardly Facebook page that doesn't post nice things about us, or in other venues at town meeting, well, where are the teachers? We're here all the time, to be quite honest with you. We're here taking care of wet noses. We're here changing more diapers this year than we ever have before. We're here Band-Aids on skin knees, kids in crisis, kids in need. How many of us in our rooms have had a child burst into tears for their social and emotional problems? How many of us have shared food from our lunches? How many of us have sat in meetings and had to listen to these horror stories of broken families, broken homes, lack of support? I've had children that live in tents out in the woods. So we are here. Hopefully you sense our presence when you see a few of us. Even when we have to leave sometimes, like you might see us leave early. How many of us still have lesson planning to do? I do. I literally do. How many of us have grading still to do tonight? So when you see us come like this, it means that we know you need a reassurance that we're here. We thank you for holding the line at 1978. We want you to hold that line at 1978. And what I say to those that are frustrated by that and talk about public safety and town need, the school is part of public safety and town need. Cut more of us, there are less of us, to Band-Aid knees and change wet diapers and give our lunch up to a kid that doesn't have one. That's why Massachusetts has this very process, because they know there are places in Massachusetts that won't choose education. And so the state in its wisdom said, well, for a regional school district, we can't have them underfunded. So we let the elected school committee members fight back against that kind of cut. And that's why we're here. And we want you to support that larger number. You've already come down $600,000. There's no more movement, and we want you to stand by that. Students need their staff. There's more social emotional problems than ever before. We want to do our jobs. Let us do our jobs. And to the cowards, on a personal note, who attacked our students, we are constantly criticized for not doing enough civic education or fighting for civic discourse. These students are taking part in civic discourse. It's what you want us to do for them, and then when they do it, because you don't like the side they pick, you attack them. It's cowardly, and history will judge you for being the uninformed trolls that you are. No one will remember you at the end. And so we, as a union, we want you to know that we are here for you. You may not see us all the time because we're doing all of this stuff, but we are here. So please hold the line and keep that number. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, our business manager's report. Mrs. Geister, if you want to share with us, I know you presented some additional information on school choice that we requested, so if you want to start
Well,
from
let's start with
the
that
top.
one.
Okay.
One of the reports that's included in your packet is the numbers of students coming into the district, the numbers coming out. This data is as of June 14th. That's the last data that we received that is official from the state. Currently, there's 243 coming in and 143 going out, so there's a difference of 100. I also included the cherry sheet numbers from July, which shows estimated money coming in for the students that come here. That's $1,425,922. And those that leave our district, the expense for that, $776,972. And I wanted to show you what we have budgeted for that. In our general fund budget, that is where the expense belongs for the students going out of district. We have budgeted $793,731. It's a little bit higher than what the cherry sheet says, but these numbers are just estimates. And in December, they will adjust all of their estimates based on our October 1st enrollment. And then the expenses that we take from the school choice money for the kids coming in is in a revolving account. And as you can see, we are proposing out of that school choice revolving fund, we're spending $1,476,543, and you can see that it's for all different kinds of things. We have an elementary assistant principal. We have several teachers. There's like 8 or 9 of them in there. We have health insurance of $640,000. And then there's the extra things that are mandated, but should something happen to this money, these are the easier things to go without. And unfortunately, that's all the curriculum writing, the PD, there's textbooks in here, you know? So there's a huge chunk of stuff that supplements our regular fund budget through the school choice money.
So this year, we're looking to spend about $50,000 more out of our school choice revolving account than we're anticipating taking in.
Yes. Hopefully, when the October 1 numbers come, that number that we're expecting will go up a little bit, and hopefully some of the expenses that we anticipate won't all fully be spent.
Anyone have any questions or want more information from Ms. Geister on the school choice? Well, thank you for putting that together. It's very helpful.
Welcome.
You've also prepared our standard report.
The regular reports are there. There's, the grant money is starting to come in. I don't know if you guys looked at them. If you have any questions, we can go over something. The one thing I do want to show you is I put together a budget of like 1/12 to show that we've been staying in our allotment each month, so you can take a look at that and just see how we're doing as far as making sure we follow the rules.
Do you foresee any issues? We can't have any issues, but is there anything that alerts you that we'll have a problem meeting the 1/12 number for at least the next 2 months?
I don't think so, because you can see, like July, we spent a lot, but that was a lot of our insurances get paid up front. September is the month that you see a lot of the supply bills from the summer. It gets caught up. So now we should even out for October and November, and we should be fine because we're carrying a decent balance from the summer of not spending every penny.
Anyone have any questions on cash flow? On our revolving accounts, I did want to ask about circuit breaker. And I know when we last met, maybe a couple meetings ago, we were talking about circuit breaker, and they had given some numbers, and it looked like we had anticipated receiving more funds than were on the estimates.
The reason that the actual number that they just calculated and sent us last month, we had a student that aged out that was a residential placement. So that's a big loss in our reimbursement because we don't have the expense. So hopefully we don't have the expense, we don't have the reimbursement, so hopefully it evens out. So we just had to make a few adjustments to what we had planned with circuit breaker, but now it's good.
And was there anything else that you thought you would need to highlight for us?
Nothing. I combined the two donation accounts between Baldwinville and Templeton, and they're well aware of that they have one account to work out of now, not the two. I did send an email out to everybody. I don't know if some of you saw it, but I put a budget freeze on today just because we don't really know where we're headed. So most people should have their supplies, and if there's something they need, they're just going to ask for it individually.
Thank you for doing that.
Any other questions from Ms. Geister?
All the curriculum material is purchased, though. Teachers won't be without books or materials that they...
If they've submitted it, they should have it.
Okay, thank you.
And if there's something that they need, they can certainly ask.
Anything else? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the FY20 budget. When we last met, we had recertified portions of the number. We had reconfirmed the $19,786,889. We did appropriate and estimate and certify additional income or receipts, which were based off of the cherry sheet. So we increased the charter school reimbursement as well as the regional transportation reimbursement and recalculated the assessments to the two towns with those two numbers. We had also at that point said we wanted to give everyone a week to let us know what was important, and here we are. So I will put this out to the committee because we are a week later, And where do we stand on the FY20 budget?
Okay, I'd just like to address some comments that were directed my way. And one of them is, what happened? I thought you were all set. I thought the state had us covered. And I don't know why, I said that people were sleeping, but instead it appears some of the information I got was that they thought it was all set, that we had moved some money in school choice and that we had everything we needed, that the major areas of school configurations and class size were dealt with. Well, we had 2 district meetings, and we're not afraid of the state coming in. We're not afraid of what our budget says and where our money goes. That's not the point. What I was more afraid of and responding to was the fact that citizens of our town came out. And the citizens who spent their time and expressed their opinions have areas that they're protecting. We need to work with the citizens on this budget and subsequent budgets. It starts again at the end of October. We work on next year's budget. So we have to realize that we are a member of a town. We are representing our students in our budget. So at the end of the second meeting, not only did the people on the floor hold up cuts for the town that would happen and said, where are yours? But there were a few members who also wanted to look at reducing because enough is enough. So we asked the administration, Dr. Casavan, to produce a list. And that list addressed the $300,000 that the town is talking about, and that's what would happen to our schools if that cut happened. We don't have all the money. Everything isn't all set. That $300,000 digs into those areas that you all have letters about. So when people say to me, well, what about the state? Well, we're the town of Templeton and Phillipston, and this is our school district, and we need to work together to try to solve it. And one of the ways we're doing that is say, prepare the cut list. And let the parents address that. And the teachers certainly have. We have parents who are here who have, and we have heard from more. Obviously, getting out at night is not the easiest thing for working people. So the budget that we have at 19.78 is the best budget for kids. And that's what I'm advocating for, and that's why I want that to happen, and I really don't want to say the state will settle it for us because I like to solve my own problems, and that's what this thing is about. And the town legitimately is trying to do the same. So if we can move into the future with the idea that we do want to work together, it's the best for everybody. So that's how I will vote.
Mrs. Charter?
I agree with what you said, but the best budget for the kids was the 20 million.
Well,
That was the best budget
yeah.
for the kids. We can't even give them middle school language, which is foreign language, which makes me crazy. I stand behind the 1970. What's that?
Any other comments? If I stand by our vote from last week. Mrs. Mattson?
I'm not sure. I'm still, I'm still wavering. It's really nice to see all of you tonight. I know I was the one letter that voted no. And I did get a lot of, we yelled at letters, emails, and like I said, it's really nice to see you all and the support that we're getting. It's actually making me maybe change my mind. So when we get to that vote, it's going to be, I'm not sure exactly how it's voting tonight.
Anybody else?
I think there's one important piece too. This is a school committee meeting. The vote is October 22nd. Someone asked me the difference. Well, the difference is that the vote happens on the 22nd. So if you live in town, you have parents who live in town, brothers, sisters, that's the vote that matters. Just so we all know that. Being a former teacher, you know, we have to make sure everybody gets it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, so Margaret, I'd just like to say that, you know, it has been a long process, and, you know, I appreciate Laurie, you know, going back and forth, because I think we all have, you know, I really have. Again, I think it's great to see everybody out in the audience, but, you know, the big meeting will be the Tri-Town meeting. I think that we're all here tonight where we are, you know, at the 17.9, this committee, the reason we've come up with it, because we think that that is, you know, a reasonable amount and what we need, what the students deserve in this school. I've heard a lot of information over the course of this budget process, a lot from my committee members up here, a lot from some of the other board members and the townspeople, and I like to think that, you know, I can take all that information and make a reasonable decision, and, you know, we've done that. We've weighed that very heavily. The thing that I really keep coming back to in this process is that the charge of this committee is to improve student achievement, okay? And all the arguments that we've heard, you know what I mean? I don't think anything there has changed any of that at this point. Nothing has changed. There have been a lot of good arguments on other things, but for the charge of this committee, our charge is to improve student achievement, and I haven't seen anything that has changed that. So I'm not wavering on that. I think we need to, we have been very creative, I think, in coming down $600,000. I think we've done a great decision, a great job doing that, coming to that point, but we're not there. I don't think we need to go any lower. I'm holding that number. I think this is what our students deserve, and I think the goal of this committee is we must put the students first, and so I'm sticking with the 17.9.
1970.
What?
One of them I'm sticking.
You had me till then.
Until then, thanks, Chris.
I just want to say that as a representative of the student body, my friends don't want to see their principal get fired, and they don't want to see kindergartners compiled into classroom sizes much larger than they are right now. They don't want to see kids lining up at the nurse's office. So based on what I've heard and what I think the student body wants is that they don't want these things to happen. So if that means passing the 1978, then that's what I think the student body probably wants.
Like you've said, Cora, the main point of this committee is for the students, for the children, for education, and any cuts to make any major cuts like are proposed are not conducive to any sort of education from a student point of view, excuse me. None of these cuts would help a student in their achievement in any type of educational system.
So this is great, but here we are again. So in this room, I think I'm fairly confident to say that we're all in agreement. This isn't the room, nor the venue, and please, you know, bear with me, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't. What's going to happen here, you know, in a few weeks is that we're going to go through another meeting, another, you know, joint district-wide meeting. That's where it's going to matter. I'm going to tell you, though, quite frankly, that what is worse than the discussion of monies and cuts, quite frankly, and I was just talking about this, is the uncertainty. There is a toll mentally for these folks who have literally no idea what is going to happen. Now, I'm not even talking about children right now, so never, I mean, let's not forget that's our charge. But quite frankly, a decision, from my perspective, needs to be made sooner about the 22nd of October, one way or another. Let the votes stand where they may, because what is hard to do is to anticipate the unknown. So we already know what's good for education, 19.7. If the body, though, does not believe that, and the vote does not carry, we then enter into this abyss of unknown. That is unacceptable for me, as I watch folks not know what we're doing next. So, although of course I agree with the 19.7 number, I just have to say that what is important, honestly, at this point is a decision. Not tonight, but ultimately a decision. Because carrying this out any further is just, honestly, it's almost cruel and unusual for some. And we have got to know how we're moving forward, and what we're doing, say, tomorrow. So, thank you.
So, unless there's any other comments, I would look for, if someone wanted to make a motion to change something, this would be the time. Otherwise, we'll move on to our next agenda item. We've already certified our number. Last week, we did all that, so there's really nothing for us to do unless someone wanted to change that. So, do I see anyone wanting to make a motion? Okay, so our number we voted last week, that we certified the amount of $19,786,889 with estimated income of $11,215,330, which meant the assessment to Templeton would be $6,923,909, and the assessment to Phillipston would be $1,647,650. So those were the numbers that we had previously certified. So we'll move forward with that. Again, just to iterate what everyone else has said, we do thank everyone for coming, but the October 22nd vote is really where it's critical, that if you stand in support or against this number, you need to come out and have your vote heard, your voice heard, and your vote counted. And we need to, move forward with our school budget and start focusing on the education and all of the other things that this board needs to do to maximize student achievement that we are not able to do because we're so focused on getting a number passed. So, thank you.
And I just want to add one thing before we go is, again, I think, many of my colleagues have said this is great to see everybody tonight, but again, October 22nd is the date. You need to keep pushing that out there. This turnout is great, but we really need a better turnout at the October 22nd. I'm not good with numbers today. But we really need to push for the October 22nd. 19.7, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next agenda item then. We had an agenda item for the district town meeting moderator selection. When we had met last, we had said we'd put it on it to see if we were ready to do it. We have received an email saying that we would like to have a meeting at 6:30 on the evening of the 22nd to actually do the appointment of the moderator. I believe Mr. Henshaw was reached out to again, has said yes, he will do it. Mr. Flynn in Phillipston had indicated that he was fine not stepping up to be the moderator again, and if Mr. Henshaw wanted to do that, that was fine. So the thought was a meeting would be scheduled at 6:30 prior to the district-wide town meeting where we could get together, do the formal vote on that. We would need a quorum as the school committee to be able to open our meeting so that we can attest to the results of the two Board of Selectmen's votes for that moderator. So I'm just asking if we can count on the school committee being there by 6:30. I have already posted a meeting in anticipation of everyone shaking their head yes. I believe Templeton and Phillipston will be doing the same, and that's when the moderator will be appointed. We actually have up until 6:59 p.m. that evening to make that official appointment. Next up, a transportation and busing update. When we last met, we were having some issues.
Yeah. It's been hard. It's been a hard week. It's Wednesday, and so as we reported out, First Student is having difficulty with the number of drivers that they have. It's not the number of buses, it's not the number of routes, it's the number of qualified drivers. As we have detailed, there have been occasions, it just happened, I think, just yesterday, where if we didn't leave 20 minutes early for sports, than we normally would have within the school day, then no sports would have happened because that bus driver had to get them there, then back to do another run. So, and that's the best case scenario. There's just been outright cancellations just in general.
They don't have substitutes either. We had one of our morning transportation buses the other day. We had a driver from Fitchburg who got lost out here, and the kids were very late to school. And then in the afternoon, they weren't available, so the middle high school students had to be put on other buses to get them home. And then coming for the elementary, the bus broke down coming from Fitchburg, so elementary was a half hour late too.
Are they giving us any credit?
Well, credit, we're fining them a lot. So this is a level 3, occurrence, which is now up to $1,000, I think, an occurrence of every time that they've scheduled a bus and it doesn't show. It's $1,000. So the one incident.
You get them up to 286.
Well, we have a lot of year left, so we'll see. So, in true, honestly, warrior fashion, I have to. He is a certified bus driver, so I can say this is that Mr. Mike Donofrio has taken the liberty and he's helped us get kids down to Gilman and Waite. He drives Sparky. We've talked about carpooling and what does that mean, because there's of course regulations around that. You have to be quarried. Okay, so we're working on some workarounds in case these out of the blue. I mean, it's great if we find someone $1,000 for something, but if we can't get 30, in this case 30, athletes, or somewhere, then that, what does that mean? So, to their credit, they haven't denied the issue. They haven't, First Student has been very open with the fact that they are having difficulties with drivers, which, the bus bid it's due, and so we're gonna have to rethink some things, but that's where we're at. It hasn't changed since the last time we spoke, and we are hopeful that these drivers that are in school, right, in driver's school, pass, and that they get on the roads as quickly as possible.
Thank you. We'll carry this forward to next month
Yeah,
again. And
hopefully we can say
get an
something
update.
really fun next time.
Okay, all right, the Templeton Elementary School building lease. When we last met, we had all received, at the end of that meeting, or maybe it was the meeting before, I forget which one now, a red line version back from council on recommended changes. Dr. Kazaman is looking for input from everybody. I had emailed when I pushed the agenda out, just asking everybody to coordinate through Dr. Kazavan. If you have not sent comments in, if you could do so, how about we say by the next 2 days? So by the end of the week, we can have that consolidated and ready to send back to the town of Templeton for their review. That makes sense?
That's good with me, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mine, anybody have any questions or comments or concerns about trying to get, if you haven't had a chance to get your feedback done, that'll give you enough time. Great. All right, just an update on the Baldenville Elementary School. We had voted to return the building to the town of Templeton, and we just wanted to make sure that there was no issues with us getting that message through, and
We have yet to send a letter, but we are penning that as we speak. So we'll be, that letter will go to the select board to let them know.
Perfect. Okay. School committee comments. Let's start, I think James had his hand up first. Okay. Yep.
Students have a voice. In fact, students have had the right of the First Amendment in public schools since the Supreme Court ruling in 1969. The Supreme Court case, Tinker v. Des Moines, resulted in the ruling that the First Amendment be applied to students in public schools, and school officials cannot censor the speech unless it is disruptive to the educational process. With that being said, I would appreciate, rather I demand, that the student voice be no longer suppressed and will never be suppressed. These cuts would directly affect students in a negative way and hurt their education. We are here to represent them and fight for their education because some may not be able to. Thank you.
Mrs. Matson?
So I'm just responding to Matt Formier's comment that he brought up earlier about the comments online regarding our students. And I've been saying this for quite a few years, that it's really unfair that we as a school district, we have policy in place that, that kids can't go online and haze and bully and that type of thing online, but we allow adults to do exactly the same thing, and there's no recourse for that. And for them to do it to students is actually it just blows my mind. And we have no recourse for that. I don't even know where to go with that. I mean, it's outside of our jurisdiction. Yeah, our jurisdiction. But man, they should just be ashamed of themselves. I don't know. I'm not on Facebook. I've never been on Facebook. I haven't even read what was written about the students. I would probably want to punch whoever it was in the face. But it's just too bad that there is not law or something.
I can understand what Lori's saying, but I think we add to it when we start to talk about punching somebody in the face and then getting seriously, if you are looking for a change, that's not the way to get it. And even as adults sitting here, our comments really need to be moderated so that we look at the issue and not something that, if you'd like to do it, talk in your own group, but not in a public forum. Thank you.
I'm not sure, I mean, I think I would, for parents of the children, if they're that distraught by it, look into it with the police, because I'm not sure that adults can bully a minor in a public forum like that. So I would, if they're that concerned, look into it.
I would like to make a comment in regards to the idea that some people have expressed that student voices don't matter because we're under the age of 18. To that I'd like to say that obviously they do matter because I've raised my voice and people have made a stink about it. So obviously what I'm saying matters because people are upset by it. And the only way that we can grow and learn from other people and change through our ideas is when we are uncomfortable. So to the people who are made uncomfortable by students speaking out, I say thank you because you are encouraging change.
I just want to say I'm proud of our student reps.
I do have a report that I want to give with comments. I attended the Mass Association of Regional Schools general meeting on Tuesday. Mrs. Chartier and Mr. Marks were there, as were Dr. Casavant and Ms. Geister. I just wanted to report back to the committee and let you know what happened there. It was a really fabulous MARS meeting. Of course, when you have a topic such as the Student Opportunity Act in front of you, it generates a lot of interest, and when you can get Senator Goby and Representative Kim Ferguson, as well as Jay Sullivan and Rob O'Donnell from DESE in to speak to you, you're going to get people to stand up and listen. What was most interesting to me, and please, Mrs. Chartier, Mr. Marks, Dr. Casavant, Ms. Geister, fill in as you see fit, was listening to Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson speak about the Student Opportunity Act. And it was clear they acknowledged up front that this wasn't going to help everybody, especially short term. Longer term, we would see some change, but short term, there would be a lot of districts who would not see any help. What we might see is shifts in larger minimum contribution requirements for municipalities, especially in regional districts who are in hold harmless, and all that would do is shift from the additional monies that the municipalities are funding. They would use that to cover the increase in minimum contribution, and net, you're not getting more money because you can't get blood from a stone. These communities only have so much to give. So it was encouraging for me to hear that, because so much of this ed funding change, the impact to communities in minimum contributions has been minimized or just overlooked. So people are really taking it seriously. One of the things in the Student Opportunity Act that will be looked at is the whole minimum contribution and municipal impact, and how they figure that out with property values and income and some of the issues. So there's some really great things that will be happening. I don't know what exactly it'll mean from us, but I think there's an acknowledgement that some of us won't see any help right away. That's what I took. Is that a good summary? Yeah.
Have any good news?
So, a couple of things. Then we also got the report from Holly McLennan, who was the MARS representative on the state mandated transportation committee. They had a multifaceted charge to look at issues with busing, and we all kind of chuckled because we know that there's issues with finding competition and getting contracts and the whole 9 yards. So they had a whole host of things that they were looking at. They have been given to the end of the year to get their final report out. So she wasn't really committing to a lot, but she said, stay tuned, the report will be issued and you can kind of hear our thoughts. As far as what would be implemented, there's a big question mark, because obviously there's dollars that might be attached to a lot of that that would have to be addressed. But the good news was, and it tied into this transportation piece, was going back to the Student Opportunity Act, circuit breaker reimbursement. The way it's written right now, and we hope it goes through the House with the same provisions and gets passed, is that now transportation for special education is counted towards reimbursement. So there's a whole formula, and certain students don't qualify to be reimbursed because they don't meet a threshold. But now that we can throw transportation on top of it, we have a chance that more students will be qualified, so that our more monies would be coming into the district to reimburse us for special education in that circuit breaker fund. So that was really exciting there. So there is a real benefit that we may see right away. And if anyone's looked at our transportation costs, we spend almost as much, close amount on special transportation as we do on regular. So it could amount to some monies. Again, there's only a finite pot of money. So tuition gets reimbursed first and then transportation. So there wasn't a commitment yet because they didn't quite know what it would look like, because they need actuals. So I know we'll be getting asked for some information, and we'll see how that shakes out. So that was positive. That's something new. Two other things real quick. There is a grant that DESE has put out. It's a competitive grant looking at funding some regionalization and further shared services, which just was released probably about 2 hours ago. So we'll be taking a look at that and see if there's something that we might want to look at getting a grant to look at that we might be able to do. And then there's a new data tool that I will share with the committee that, what's her name? She's Sarah Carlton, who's a senior policy analyst with DESE. She put this tool together that is pulling a whole slew of data together so you can put our school in there and it pulls information. It's really a very robust tool to be able to look at, compare our district to other districts. It is actually, if anyone's on the Facebook group, Support Mass Regional Schools, that link was shared out there, so everyone in the public can go look at this. It's in beta testing, so it's not fully vetted, but we pulled it up. I know I was sitting with Jeff, who had his laptop, and I'm sure you guys were in front of us doing the same thing, and it looked to have some really great data to take a look at the district at a glance. So that was another really positive thing that they're trying to push data out. So it was a really good meeting. Any other comments? Oh, one more.
James and I were invited to be student panelists at the MASC conference in Hyannis in November, so that's pretty exciting. I just wanted to share that. So we're waiting some information back so we can talk about student advocacy. Yeah.
Okay, next up is speaking of the MASC conference, I am the delegate appointed by the committee to represent our district at the MASC resolutions committee voting. There are 9 resolutions this year that the committee will look at. I wanted to do a brief report out on what they are. There doesn't really seem to be much in the controversy side, so I'll quickly run through. Resolution 1 is banning polystyrene from schools. Basically, MASC wants to urge the Commonwealth to ban the use of expanded polystyrene foam cups, bowls, plates, and trays from Mass public schools by the 2022 to 2023 school year. The second one pertains to educator diversity and professional licensure. MASC calls for the elimination of the MTEL and the Mass Performance Assessment for leaders and as licensing requirements for educators, and that we call for the governance and licensure of professional educators to be vested in a board comprised of licensed educators. There's a large push for inclusion, diversity, and equity as far as people getting licensed, and there's a lot of barriers to entry with the MTEL and the, I don't know, is it MAPAL, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah,
PAL.
the PAL assessments.
Okay, so they're looking to push that. There's an initiative out there, and MASC is behind that to make that happen. The third has to do with school transportation. The MASC is going to call for the creation of a working group to advise the legislator on the best solutions to support greater competition and higher performance from transportation companies, and furthermore eliminating MGL Chapter 71, Section 7C, and authorize a deeper analysis into the lack of bidders on school transportation contracts. This has also been addressed in the other transportation committee. This was brought forth by the Hudson School Committee because they're having big problems down there. Resolution 4 has to do with climate change. That one is just MASC calls on Congress to take swift and effective action on climate change to protect current and future students and advocate for funding for school infrastructure need and emergency funding for disaster relief caused by natural catastrophes and extreme weather events. Resolution 5 is full funding for transportation costs for students in foster care and state care. Right now, we only get a fairly small percentage of the transportation costs for foster and state care students, so this would advocate for full reimbursement. 6 would be universal quality pre-K access in Massachusetts. It is focusing on access, not funding. There are communities who have no pre-K programs available. So although we have one, and we have many providers out there who provide pre-K services, there are many communities who do not have pre-K in their public education system. So this is trying to get the state to push for that because we know how important that early education is. Number 7 is poverty in children. Saying we want to prioritize as part of our public policy agenda as members of the Mass Association of School Committees and file for support of any legislation that supports the eradication of poverty among children in Mass and advocate for social and economic justice for students and their families. And there's a whole host of things that will include. Number 8 is a resolution for access to menstrual supplies, to provide additional funding, to provide free access to menstrual products from the school nurse and in restrooms and locker rooms. And then the last one has to do with charter school reform, looking further at charter schools to address the deleterious effects of charter school funding on certain municipalities, and they want a set of reforms to make sure that the student population represents the communities that are sending students. Also that funding would be in full by the Commonwealth rather than an appropriation from our Chapter 70 funds. So those are the 9 resolutions. After reviewing them, and I sat in on I was a member of the actual resolutions committee for MASC that put these together. I would recommend to the board that we vote in favor of these. I don't see anything controversial, but I'll put it out to the committee to see if there's anything that you want me to consider or take note of as we sit through these votes.
Emma and I actually sat, when we went to the State Student Advisory Council of the Department of Education, and one of the topics was about creating more diverse and creating more diversity in spots for more diverse group of educators and actually really good ideas.
So if there's no objection, I will vote in support of these. I'd actually like to do a vote so I can confirm that the committee. So I would entertain a motion that we support the resolutions as presented. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So I will vote the will of the committee. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Looking at the rest of this agenda, we are going to have an MCAS results, and I'm sure that majority of this audience has participated and composed and is working on the MCAS results, but we will see a presentation. I hope you all have agendas. I saw a number of them being passed out. Subcommittee report and the school committee. So what I'm suggesting is that if anybody has lesson plans or work that needs to be done, lunches to be packed for tomorrow, and needs to leave, that might be a time to do so. So we could take a.
So how about we take a 5-minute intermission? So if those.
They like this stuff, though.
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
Okay, so we have just taken our intermission. There's 2 items before we get into, actually we have a superintendent's report, so 3 items of our MCAS results. Surplus items we're carrying on is, do we have?
Yes, I have.
Okay, oh, so it's out there?
Yes,
Or-
it's on the thing. There's a
Okay, I'm
7-man
sorry.
sled
Okay.
that Coach Barry has put on there, an old football
So
sled.
that is the only thing on the
It's the
list?
only thing,
Okay,
yeah.
so there is a list out there. My apologies because I didn't notice it.
I just
Okay.
put on
So we have a 7-man sled from the football program that is being accessed. I would entertain a motion to approve the surplusing of that item.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Do we have any questions, comments?
I almost had a question as to what a 7-man sled was, but.
Got it now.
I figured it out,
You know, it's not a winter
There's
item.
a picture
for-
on the agenda.
Go on a nice sledding
so. I
ride.
know, I was thinking, but then I was like, yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's not.
toboggan runs for all. Okay, so hearing no questions, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, so that passes unanimously. Okay, tri-board meeting on the 28th. We have a meeting scheduled at 5 o'clock in the library with the Templeton and Phillipston Boards of Selectmen. We'll have a special guest speaker, Roger Hatch.
Yep, yes.
Who spent many years with the Department of Elementary and
Yep.
Secondary Education in the finance group.
And I wasn't able to attend, but the joint town meeting that the select boards had, and I haven't yet to look at the email, but I know that they sent me some topics for discussion, because Roger wanted just to be prepared. He is a school finance, I'm going to say expert. He won't, but he is a school finance expert. Municipal side and all, I mean, that's, it gets a little gray for him. So we wanted him to be the best prepared as possible, and so I believe I have a list of some items, and I'm going to send those along, and he'll be up. Yes.
Right. If I could just ask, maybe if you could pass those along to this group?
Absolutely.
And then we can
Yep.
add, so if anyone, once you see those, has any
Oh, yeah.
additional topics for consideration, just get back to Dr. Kazavant so he can prepare Mr. Hatch.
Because he would like to be prepared, so just, if you have some ideas, please let me know as soon as possible. Thank you.
So, and that'll be added to just our normal agenda to kick off the budget cycle. Yep.
So the tri-board meeting is regarding the budget cycle.
Right.
FY19.
Right now, of course, we'll
21.
have had our October 22nd district-wide town meeting. We'll have some result from that. And then we'll be moving into this, which is really to kick off, you're exactly right, the FY21. But I know last year, the agenda started off with a kind of where are we, current year. So we will follow that same type of agenda to get a pulse on FY20 and then move forward. So, okay. And again, that's 5 o'clock on Monday, the 28th, in the library. There were no items that popped up 48 hours in advance. Superintendent report, we've already talked about school choice.
Yep.
Anything else to add?
Just real quick, October 1st happened, which is awesome, because then we basically have our numbers. So like, as discussed, this October 1 number of residents and where they're from is an important number because it really sets the stage, moving forward in terms of our FY21 budget. So we are locked in at 1,470 total students in this district. I can say that as October 1 that happened. We have 1,220 district residents, meaning Phillipston and Templeton combined. We know that we have 250 school choice students assigned, although we'll wait for the December report to tell us that officially. We don't know who is school choiced out, because we don't know normally. They just call for records, as we talked about before, but in December we'll get a list of who are those students who may have gone out, who have school choiced. Templeton comes in with 1,038 students in terms of residents, Phillipston with 182, and that the grand total is up about, since we started to take, we've never had this many students grand total since we've started to keep track of in 2016 in this manner, and I don't believe we've certainly not had this many residents since I've been here, since we started keeping track in 2016. So there you go. There's your quick kind of snippet in terms of our enrollment. So it's very positive. Did I calculate right? Did I get it right?
I was just looking at it, but I can't find the number, so I'll look at it later.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments for Dr. Casavant? Okay, with that being said, we are going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Kate Police, our Chief Academic Officer, who is going to present some MCAS information. The scores were released. If the committee would like to move to the other side, this way we don't have to break our necks turning around and we can sit behind.
I also attached the thing to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Presentation, if that's easier.
Oh, okay, that would be awesome, thank you. So it is part of, on our agenda.
It's in the administrative.
Great.
Okay. So the overall theme is that we saw improvement in many areas. I'm just going to give a quick overview. So overall, we have a classification. This replaces the former level 1 to 5. All of our schools in the district as a whole are classified as not requiring assistance or intervention. They're either classified as requiring, not requiring, or school of distinction. There's some upper category. The reason for the classification in all cases is either because we made moderate or substantial progress towards our targets, and those are targets that the state sets for us. So the Department of Ed uses two components. Simplified, they are the criterion referenced component, and that measures our progress towards our targets that the Department of Ed sets for us every year. The second component is the normative component, and that is the accountability percentile, which shows where we stand relative to other schools. The past system predominantly relied only on that normative component, and the department shifted philosophy to want districts to measure themselves against themselves and always be improving based on where you are. So we have the criterion referenced component, which is where they set our targets. The next page shows a graph, which didn't move. Oh. I didn't do that.
Oh, no, of course not, Kate.
I didn't.
Who hijacked your screens? Movie night.
Okay, it says I'm connected to the Kiva. There we go. There we go. So this graph shows 2018, 2019, and cumulative criterion referenced percentages. That's the first category where we're measured against targets. What the state did was last year in 2018 was the first year. So they took that score, they took this, which is in blue on these graphs. Then they took this year's 2019 score, which is in red on the graphs, and they weight this year's score 60% and last year's score 40% to give us a cumulative criterion reference score. So you can see in almost all cases we went up. Of particular note is the middle school that went from 12% to 42%, which was an incredible gain. Another piece that's of note is that the high school, for the first time this year in 2019, took the new MCAS 2.0 in English and math. Both of those departments really prepared very well all year. Last year, they adjusted what they were doing based on the new standards and based on what they knew about what the new requirements would be, and it has paid off for them. So you can see from, I have a slide for each school to show you just a little bit about what went into this for each school, but you can see the high school went from 34 to 45, and given that they also had an entirely new test in 2 out of 3 areas, that's really commendable. So, oh, that doesn't show so well on that. Oh, there it goes. So the high school, there are more components of this, these criterion reference scores, but the real bulk of it is in achievement and growth. In the high school, 47.5% of the score for this criterion reference component is in achievement, and that's how are we achieving on MCAS. And 22.5% is in growth. And growth is only in English and math because you need to have subsequent years to show growth, and science skips years. So the high school exceeded their target in English and exceeded their target in math and had no change in science. So that's really awesome. They also had exceeded typical growth in English, and they had what's categorized as low typical growth in math. So that's kind of the profile for the high school. For the middle school, you'll see that their percentages are a little different. They have 67.5% of their score as achievement. That's because the high school has an additional category of high school completion that the other schools don't have. So 67.5% of it is on the 3 MCAS assessments. The middle school improved but was below target in English. They met their target in math and had no change in science, and they had low typical growth in English and high typical growth in math. But they really did well, as you can see from the graph on the previous slide. Baldwinville, again, 67.5% for achievement and 22.5% of the score is for growth. They declined in English, but I put the numbers there just to show you that the decline was minimal. They went from 498.8 to 496.2. there was not really a large decline, but any decline gives us lower points, and that accounts a little bit for Baldwinville's school percentage this year. They met their target in math, no change in science. And even though they declined in English, they had high typical growth in English, which is very interesting. So that tells me that possibly the cohort of kids that they had grew from where they were, but compared to the cohort they had last year, they declined, but the growth was strong. And then Phillipston, because they don't have sufficient numbers to be scored in all areas, 90% of their criterion reference score is from achievement, and they don't have any results for growth. So they declined in English. They had a little more of a substantial decline, but they did exceed their target in math, and they had no results recorded in science. So those are what went, don't get dizzy, like close your eyes while you look at the screen. Those are what went into these scores and these graphs. Okay, I'm going to do that again. So the second component is the normative component, and that's where we're ranked according to similar schools across the state. So in 2018, the high school's accountability percentile was 49, and in 2019 it was 56, which is tremendous. Middle school was 20 and went to 36, almost doubling, which is really great, and BES went from 31 to 25. 25 or 26? 26.
Yeah.
So some steps that we're taking to follow up on these results. First, I provided a detailed package of information by student and item to teaching teams so they can do item analysis and look at where might we have curricular gaps and where might we have needs for specific groups of students to help them improve. That's been done. Those results have been provided to those teams, and that work is ongoing. The second thing is to analyze student results on ELA essays and constructed response items in math and science. And I mentioned this last month so that we can see areas for improving students' preparedness on the test. And in general, these two categories where students have to construct a response rather than answering an open response, rather than answering a multiple choice, now they have another category called selected response. So you can, it's not only is it A, B, C, or D, it's which of these is it, so it might be more than one. But in addition to that, they have these constructed response or essays where students have to produce an answer and show that answer, and those are weighted heavily. So these tests, whether it's English, math, or science, have between 2 and 4 of these items out of about 40 items, and yet they're weighted between 25 and 47%, depending on the grade and the test. I'm trying to simplify. So that's an area that we really do need to look at and see what we can do to improve in those areas. So in addition to that, of course, we're going to work with teams to develop action steps based on their analysis of the data, and that's already begun to happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Kate? I did just want to bring up a point because I know that you mentioned it, but I think that it kind of gets lost in some of the translation, that last year the state did come up with these new accountability standards. So we're really only year 2 into seeing what does it mean and how do we focus on meeting our targets. And the second piece for me, as I was looking at the high school specifically, are those other components and things that the state is looking at us to ensure we have rigor in the curriculum. How many advanced level classes? What is our, as you said, the completion rate with the cohort group? attendance, and this is kind of where I want to leave it, is that we are weighted heavily on attendance. So a pitch to the parents out there, it matters when your students come to school. If your students don't come to school, not only are they not learning, but it is also factored into these metrics that the state is looking at us by. So it's important to understand the importance of the attendance. And I think there's, and I know we had a project to clean up how we were coding things to make sure. But it's, what is it, more than 10 days, I think is what the metric is?
So I focused on the achievement and the growth, which are 60 to 70% of our criterion reference score. But the high school is also rated on their high school graduation rate. All schools have an attendance component, and the high school has, as you mentioned, the advanced coursework. So we did a significant project last year cleaning up our attendance codes to make sure in the first place what we're reporting to the state is accurate. And there has been information in newsletters and so forth about attendance, so that definitely is important. It is worth noting that the state has designated the Project Lead the Way courses that we're now offering and adding to at the high school as advanced coursework. So that's in our favor.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'm sure this is an intro. We'll hear more as we progress. So I thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And with that, we'll go into our subcommittee reports, academic, administrative.
Well, I think that we had a full report from Kate about the MCAS, so that was a big component of what we did that particular meeting. And we'll follow up with intervention groups and topics as they come up.
Great. Finance, we had initially scheduled a kickoff to our finance subcommittee. It is a meeting of the whole, but it is a subcommittee for our next meeting, which was supposed to be on Wednesday, the 16th, a week from now. We did move that meeting, our regular meeting, till tonight, because that's why we're here. I wanted to ask the committee if you'd like to defer kicking off our internal meeting until our November, which we did have that scheduled anyway. Or did you want to meet next week on finance?
I'd like to get through FY20's budget first.
Okay, it sounds like we're okay. We'll start with November with our full kickoff.
Yeah, let's get through the district meeting.
Right, and plus we'll have our tri-board meeting on the 28th as well. So we'll plan on our first finance kickoff on November 20th at 5 o'clock. And that, I believe, we'll do in the central office, and then we'll come back up here for our regular meeting at 6 o'clock. We do it in central office because usually that's where you have more information, papers and things. It's just easier. Okay, so that will be canceled for the 16th. Facilities, do we have an update on facilities?
No, we haven't met. I think last time that we talked, we had talked about purchasing the tractor for the snow. So no big update, but the paperwork has gone through. The order is in there. They're just we're waiting for delivery on that. Okay, that's really all we have going.
Long-term planning.
Mostly, we've just been discussing the budget, and we discussed after that's all behind us, we'd like to open up the regional agreement and start looking into that.
Okay. Templeton Elementary School Building Committee.
We had a nice dedication last Saturday. I didn't hear any bad things. I was very happy with the building, and I know the teachers are, and the students certainly are, so it's really gratifying.
And Senator Goby actually at the Mars meeting did a shout out to, is Dr. Kazavant out there? And she made him raise his hand, and she really had some very nice words to say about the Templeton community and the pride that was shown at the meeting. So what a great event. Phillipston Building Committee, I don't think we really have much of an update yet. I know that they're meeting tonight in Phillipston, so perhaps next time we'll have some more information. I was curious, though, and perhaps, is Mr. Moulton still here?
He went to the meeting.
Okay, oh, good. So I was just curious if we knew anything about the heating units. I know that we had ordered them. Were they?
They're being installed on November 5th. There's no school that day.
Perfect.
So.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, next up, correspondence. There is a letter that is attached to the agenda from, and I'm just going to pull it out here real quick. From Noel Francis. This is the second letter. He had sent us a letter a couple of months ago. He actually spoke at the district-wide town meeting. He is personally taking some initiatives to try and look at getting funding for the school for certain things. The supplemental budget, which is really a one-time event, and he's been in some discussions with Susanna Whips. I would just ask, since this is just put out there for everyone, if you could take a look at the letter. And I know that he's looking for some confirmations of some numbers, so perhaps I can turn that back over to Dr. Casavant and Ms. Geister to just kind of look through, and if there's any information that we can provide to him, if it was transportation he was looking at, to be able to help him with that. He was looking for the school committee to help with some of the advocacy, but he was looking for something by October 31st. Since we're just getting to look at this now, I'd really like some people to take time. And if you've got any thoughts, maybe when we meet in November, we can craft a response back. I know it's after the date that he's asked us to get back to him, but I'd really like some people to give thought to what he's looking at, as well as how as it works with the new Student Opportunity Act, which may be voted in at that point. So some of this may kind of dovetail together. So if that's acceptable to everybody. All right. And after that, we have our next meeting is the district-wide town meeting on October 22nd. It's a Tuesday at 7 o'clock. At 6:30, though, we will have a brief school committee meeting to facilitate the process of assigning the moderator or having the Board of Selectmen appoint them. So that's the first meeting at 6:30. We do have a meeting for the school committee posted as well, so that if in fact we need to take any action at that district-wide meeting or following, we have a meeting posted where we could do so. After that, on the 28th, Monday, 5 o'clock in the library is the tri-board meeting. And then our regular school committee meeting would be November 20th, a Wednesday, in the Kiva at 6 o'clock. So those are our upcoming meetings. And with that, if there is nothing else that anyone would like to add, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know why.